We all know that Star Wars revolutionized the sci-fi fantasy genre, making it everything it is today. Since the film first hit theaters in 1977, Star Wars has branched out into way more than just an epic saga. It's hit every other medium out there, including dangerously addictive video games. Hey there, I'm Jacob with the Leaderboard, and we're here to check out the best video games that spawn from our favorite sci-fi franchise. So strap on those lightsabers and prepare for battle, because we're counting down the top 9 Star Wars games you should play. Let's get started. Number 9. Super Star Wars for the SNES. Okay, kicking things off here with 1992's Super Star Wars for the SNES, which was arguably the first really awesome Star Wars game ever. Before that, there was the original Atari and NES titles, but they failed to hold up in comparison. But this side-scrolling adventure was the pinnacle of Star Wars gaming at the time, because like with most of the Super titles of the 90s, this game lived up to its expectations by giving players exactly what they wanted, starting with updated graphics and an epic storyline. It was even voted Best Action-Adventure Game of 1992. The story follows the first film, Episode 4, A New Hope. You start off as a trigger-happy Luke Skywalker with a blaster rifle on Tatooine, and you play through to meet all of your favorite characters: Han Solo, Chewbacca, C-3PO, R2-D2, Obi-Wan, Leia, Darth Vader, you name it. Also, once you meet Han and Chewie, you get to play as them too, which is awesome because they come with their own set of benefits. Anyway, it's platformer gameplay, so every level is pretty straightforward, and though there's not much to explore, there are plenty of hidden items to obtain. And they change things up nicely. Every few levels there's a Mode 7 shooting stage, and that's usually where you'll encounter the bosses. Following the success of Super Star Wars, there were 2 more SNES titles released shortly after, finishing out the original trilogy. Number 8. TIE Fighter for the PC. Often deemed as one of the best PC games of all time, 1994's TIE Fighter was revolutionary for Star Wars gaming because it was the first and only time players were recruited to fight exclusively for the dark side. Yep, you play as an Imperial fighter in a storyline taking place during the Rebellion era. That's sometime between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. The gameplay is similar to its prequel, X-Wing, played mainly through first person with the option to switch to third, but all in all, this game was a complete improvement over its predecessor, X-Wing. The graphics alone were a notable improvement based on the new 3D rendering software, but there were also many additional flight options added and more complex AI scripting that proved successful by gameplay standards. As far as the story is concerned, TIE Fighter takes place in space, obviously, pitted in a civil war against the Rebel forces, which is definitely the most interesting aspect of the game, the switch perspective from the Rebel Alliance to the Evil Empire. It was the first time we'd ever been on the side of the Galactic Empire. Ever. It also remains the only Star Wars game today that story progresses entirely through the dark side. We also cross paths with some of the Empire's less talked about enemies. Players must enforce the Imperial Order against other criminals such as Imperial traitors and space pirates. After all, their lack of faith is disturbing. Number 7. Shadows of the Empire for the N64. This was another mind-blowing release that took the fanbase by storm. Shadows of the Empire came out in 1996 as one of the first games available for the N64, and by 97 it had sold over 1 million copies, which is completely understandable because not only were the graphics and cinematography phenomenal for the time, but it was also the first 3D Star Wars game which featured third and first-person shooter controls. Not to mention, the narrative was absolute genius. The story takes place between episodes 5 and 6 through the eyes of Han Solo's good pal, Dash Rendar, as he leads a rebel force in the battle against the Evil Empire. This side story allows you to witness and relive many iconic moments in the films while bridging the 2 stories together, hence the name Shadows of the Empire. Get it? It's a good name. And considering the timeline, a good chunk of the story is focused on recovering the captured hero, Han Solo, and in this pursuit, the players get to face off against the renowned bounty hunter Boba Fett. I mean, how cool is that? It may also be worth noting that George Lucas co-wrote this story, and in case you didn't know, there's also a novel sharing the same title which explains the story in better detail than the game. Number 6. Knights of the Old Republic for the Xbox and PC. From BioWare, the studio that brought us Mass Effect, came the first ever Star Wars RPG-style video game released in 2003. Knights of the Old Republic was a milestone in the timeline that is Star Wars gaming because it finally gave us the opportunity to customize our own characters down to the lightsaber. And although it's technically not considered open world, this was a totally new style of gameplay for Star Wars. I mean, this was their first game giving players freedom of choice along with several different planets to adventure through. Fans were able to explore the iconic film locations and actually learn how to master the Force using over 40 different powers. Seriously, it's easy to say that this was the ultimate Star Wars fantasy at the time. Plus, it follows one of the most praised storylines in the Star Wars universe, taking place 4,000 years before the original trilogy, when the Jedi and the Sith were at their strongest in numbers. So gamers were able to witness the history of the Galactic Empire's rise to power through the eyes of the Jedi's last hope, which is you. And of course, it's up to you to finally master the Force for good and save the Republic, or succumb to the dark side and destroy it all. Either way, both sides come with their own specific endings, so it's important to choose wisely. Number 5. Star Wars: The Old Republic for the PC. After Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, BioWare came back in 2011 with the third installation of the series, an MMO reminiscent of World of Warcraft called Star Wars: The Old Republic, otherwise referred to by its acronym, SOTOR. This was basically Knights of the Old Republic 3 only for PC, but if you've played this MMO, you already know why it's made our list. Not only did this game perfect the Star Wars RPG style gameplay, but this is arguably their best open world game. SWTOR replaced the Star Wars Galaxies MMO before it, making it the only online Star Wars RPG to date. The success of Star Wars: The Old Republic is probably because of all of the extra perks that came along with it. This was the first online Star Wars RPG to feature full-scale voice acting, but it also offered gamers 17 explorable planets and about 1,600 hours of story, not to mention access to extensive never-before-seen Star Wars history such as Alderaan and the ancient Jedi Temple ruins. The game was estimated to be one of the most expensive MMORPGs of all time. Also, over 1 million fans subscribed within just 3 days, making it one of the fastest-growing MMORPGs in history. Number 4. Jedi Power Battles for the PlayStation and Dreamcast. If there was a far more enjoyable version of Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, it would be the Jedi Power Battles. The game where players learn how to master the Force and deflect friggin' lasers with their lightsabers in effort to royally kick some butt against the Empire. Starting off, you choose from one of the 5 Jedi Knights, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn, and those other 3 guys. Of course, secret characters can be unlocked, like the totally awesome Darth Maul. I mean, like, that double-bladed lightsaber was like the best part of the Phantom Menace. Anyway, Power Battles was pretty much a mindless yet addictive hack-and-slash action-adventure game, sort of Metroidvania in feel in terms of gameplay. Thankfully, the game features co-op mode because friends are always ideal when you're up against never-ending swarms of the enemy. Otherwise, the levels can get irritating, but not very long. The game consists of 14 levels in totals, 4 of which are unlockable. Still, it's pretty much action-packed the entire time, so brace yourself. Number 3. LEGO Star Wars for the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. Probably one of the most ingenious collaborative projects of all time, 2005's award-winning LEGO Star Wars game. Combining 2 of the most beloved franchises of all time into one action-packed adventure game adaptation of the Star Wars prequel trilogy, only this time, it's got that LEGO humor. Up to 2 players can rage through each scenario based on iconic events in the prequel films. Specific characters are provided to complete certain tasks, new characters are unlocked after every level, and each character comes with their own set of perks. Oh, and this is a family play style game, so there are no game over scenarios to worry about. That always helps ease the tension a little bit, right? Basically, this game is just super fun to play with friends. There's a total of 59 playable Star Wars characters that can be unlocked, so no matter who your favorite character is, chances are you could finally play as them. Well, the LEGO version of them anyway. Also, beating the game with full health or stud bars results in a special bonus chapter from Episode 4, A New Hope, which features the ever-menacing Darth Vader and one of his many stormtroopers as playable characters. Number 2. The original Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 for the PS2, Xbox, and PC. Upon its release in 2004, Battlefront was super well received by fans and critics alike for several reasons, starting with the amazing in-depth portrayals of some of the best scenes in the series. This enabled fans to actually participate in their favorite battles from the franchise, so you could literally relive those favorite Star Wars moments from childhood. Another reason it was all the rage was the game had amazing multiplayer capabilities. Up to 32 players could compete via consoles, and as many as 64 could play against each other online. This game was basically made for multiplayer, and yes, that includes even old-school split-screen co-op mode. There are single-player modes as well, but they were a far less popular aspect of the game. Battlefront was a conquest-based game featuring iconic locations from both the original and prequel trilogy. The object was to eliminate the enemy forces or take control of their command posts, whichever comes first. Players could select one of 5 classes from one of the 4 main factions: Galactic Republic, Confederacy of Independent Systems, the Rebel Alliances, and of course, the Galactic Empire. That all sounds awesome, right? Well, the only downside was that customization was minimal and none none of the main characters from the film, such as Luke or Vader, were playable, at least not until the sequel came out a year later. Battlefront 2 was virtually the same as the first, only with all of the bugs from the first game smoothed out. The voices of the gamers were heard, and Phantom Studios released a sequel with better AI, more awesome levels, including the Death Star, new characters, the use of Jedi, additional game modes, additional game maps, space battles, and finally, more narrative than the original. So all in all, I think it's safe to say that the original Battlefront series is one that the fans will never forget. And number 1, Galactic Dance-Off from Kinect Star Wars for the Xbox 360. No, I'm just kidding, but could you imagine? Our real number 1, Republic Commando for the Xbox and PC. If I had to compare Star Wars Republic Commando to any other first-person shooter out at the time, it actually wouldn't be Battlefront. Instead, it would be Halo, a first-person shooter set in space during wartime fighting alongside squad mates? Count me in. Republic Commando really didn't feel like a Star Wars game. It was gritty, it was violent, and it was awesome! As opposed to its multiplayer-focused counterpart, Star Wars Battlefront, Republic Commando is single-player focused and extremely plot-heavy. You take control over a clone commando, elite clones bred for war in Delta Squad, and fight through key locations in the Star Wars universe. Each mission grows increasingly dangerous and often pits you against stronger enemies along the way. As an on-the-ground soldier, you get a real sense of scale and danger. Super battle droids are menacing. When you're facing off against enemies, you never feel too overpowered unless you're facing off against grunt-like enemies, of course. As a squad-based game, Republic Commando focuses less on the player and more on the squad. As the leader of the squad, you, the player, are given the ability to control your squad's actions through squad commands. Just as you have control over your squad also determines how well you survive in situations. If the player ever falls in combat, it isn't automatically game over. A squad mate can actually revive you once you're incapacitated. It really helps immerse you in the world. While gameplay-wise Republic Commando doesn't quite feel like a Star Wars game, the sound effects and music certainly take you back to a galaxy far, far away. The game uses abridged versions of Williams' original score from the Star Wars films, mixed with Jesse Herlin's take on Star Wars. The music by Harlan is darker than traditional Star Wars themes, which plays well with the action-focused and gritty nature of Republic Commando, making for a badass game. Thanks for watching the top 9 Star Wars games you should play. Which games are your favorite? Did we miss any? Comment below and let us know. Check out some of our other videos by clicking the links in the description below. We have new videos dropping every week, so let us know what game you want us to cover next. And if you like getting more from your games, subscribe to the Leaderboard, where we help you game smarter.